Hi, this is Isabel Litzler. So today's video is meant to give you some information about how to go about searching for a job in Switzerland. I've given already information in previous videos, but it's always helpful to know a little bit about resources and refreshing also some of the information. So before I get started, I just want to make a disclaimer for people who are writing to me from all over the world. Just be aware that there was this votation in Switzerland where there would be preference to the locals in terms of employment. So if you're writing to me from very foreign countries outside of the EU, just know that you're not a priority on the job market, and that's just the way it is. So you can not be happy about it, want to try to push it. It doesn't matter what your reaction is. The reality is that that's the way it is. So rather than to try to push on a closed door, try to look at the open doors. Maybe you have countries around where you are that would be more than happy to have you, and especially if you're in the IT sector or engineering sectors, a lot of countries are looking for resources, don't mind about doing a work permit for you. So again, don't look at Switzerland as the only place and that you have to come. The situation again with work permits for non-EU is not great. Just be aware of it. So it's not worth trying to push something that's not going to be realistic. So that's just my disclaimer for this video for the questions I get from people outside of the European community. So now getting started on the topics, where do you find opportunities in Switzerland? So again, the market is really for the locals mainly. So even if you're from certain EU countries, you might have difficulties. Your resume may not be picked because you still need a work permit. And if you're in a profession such as admin assistant or something that's really easy to find, I would say people are not going to do a permit for you and have you come from the UK to be an admin assistant, for example. It just doesn't make sense. So you just have to be aware of that. So the first place where you find opportunities is in newspapers and magazines. There's a lot of things in Switzerland, if you're already a local, to look at. The Swiss are still very traditional in that way. Some companies only look at newspapers and post ads on there. So if you're only looking at the online world, you're missing out. Again, just diversify your job search. So I'm addressing, especially for people who are already in Switzerland, look at those newspapers and magazines. Just try to ask someone if you don't understand. But again, if you don't understand the local language, probably a whole world of job is not open for you anyways. So if your ad in the newspaper is in French or in Swiss German and you don't speak the language, probably you shouldn't answer the ad anyway. So that's the first source. The second source, which is probably the most used by English-speaking people, is online resources. So job boards is the one that comes up to mind, LinkedIn. Jobs now are mostly posted online. The recruiters tend to go directly via social media actually to post their jobs. So if you're not really active on social media, you're missing out on many opportunities. I've been saying this for years now. When I did training on LinkedIn or on Twitter, people were looking for a job and weren't on those platforms. I couldn't believe it because, especially if you're a professional, I mean, that's where it's happening nowadays. And I see those flash advertisements, we need an accountant, please message me, and 2 lines, So if you're not seeing this ad right there, you're missing out on it, So it's not just the job boards, the formal job boards, I think, are seeing probably their last days in my views. And now it's going to be more and more the direct sourcing or those flash news, in social media where people are tapping into their network and trying to leverage and find the right person that way, or using an agency. So actually that leads me to the third resource as a job seeker is the agencies. But the agencies don't necessarily work with everybody. The agencies tend to be for whatever it is that they need at that point in time. So agencies in Switzerland tend to be very specific. So you have the marketing, you have the finance ones, etc. Some agencies do a little bit of everything because they have different practice within the agency. So they might have a group that just does marketing, another one that does finance, etc. So they're able to basically rotate your resume, so it's not really an issue. But the problem with the agencies is that they tend to need specific skills at specific times. So if you're an agency that's looking, for example, at the moment for accountants, and that's your search, your main search as a provider, and you're getting all these resumes from marketing people, it's not going to be very helpful for you because you're not fitting what the agency needs at that time. So they will be happy to get your resume, but you probably won't get a lot of replies from it. So I find that agencies or headhunters, for that matter, work well if you have a very high in demand profile on that specific market again. So you need to understand the market, and you need to understand where your resume should be and in which hands it should be. And people don't necessarily know this information. It takes a little bit of analysis of what it is that you do and where you'd be best suited, etc. So that's my job. And I do offer sessions online on Working with Isabelle where we can look at this for you if you need it. So just saying that as a sideline, and you will have the link below. But really assessing, where you're at, what type of agencies would be interested in you. And if you're not really fitting with what they need, then it's worthless. So if you say, okay, I'm just going to send my resume to this agency and there's no real plan behind it, they're not going to be interested. The next one is career fairs. With career fairs, I tend to find there's not many in Switzerland, or they tend to be mostly for students or tech field. So if you're in tech, there's a lot of things going on, a lot of fairs and conventions and stuff. But if you're just an accountant, I'm saying just, if you're more of I call that the mainstream jobs, if you're an HR professional or finance professional, you won't find that there's a lot of job fairs you can go to if you're not a student. So that's limited, but again, it's something to check online. So when people ask me, well, where do I find, tourism jobs, or where do I find finance jobs? Well, I'm going to give you a very basic answer. Just type finance job Switzerland, supply chain job Switzerland, tourism job Switzerland. It's very basic, but again, sometimes people don't necessarily know how to be resourceful. So again, it's not about having a PhD in job search or a PhD in placing yourself. It's having the right mindset where you know how to go about using the web also to source the right opportunities for yourself. So that's it for career fairs. The next one, which I tend to be a little bit mixed now, having done my job as a career coach for many years, is the speculative applications, or spontaneous, also it's called, applications. The problem is that, again, based on what I just said, in Switzerland, they tend to have a particular need and be very focalized on this need. So if you're sending your resume for finance and they only want marketing people, it's probably going to be passed by. And I know I've done that myself when I was recruiting. I was really on a search for a specific profile, and my attention was 100% focused on that. And if I was to receive some resumes spontaneously, I would try to post them somewhere. But it's hard then to recall who sent the resume and to be able to catch that resume when you need it. So the problem with spontaneous application is that you might be lost in the shuffle. Now, that said, it could be useful if it's a small organization. So if it's a place where it's 2 or 3 people working, and maybe they will pay attention to it more because they don't get so many. But again, it would have to be very, very specific. That means you have done your market research, you know which kind of organizations would be interested in your resume or might be recruiting at some point. I wouldn't just send spontaneous just to send spontaneous. So that's it for that. The next one is chambers of commerce. So if you're new, especially to Switzerland, you should find the chamber of commerce for your particular country. And they do have events most of the time, so it's a great way also to network, to find out about what's going on. Again, I'm going back to the whole aspect of networking there, which is probably the best way, in my view, to find a job. So chambers of commerce could be included in your job search. So, once you find out about the events that they have and you can go to them, that helps you also branch out and find out what's going on in the market with your specific function or field. And the last one that's a resource, especially for Europeans, is EURES, EURES, and I will post it below. So EURES is really a site that helps people move from country to country. Again, Switzerland is not part of the EU, so it may be that you don't find it so useful. But as I say to individuals, don't focus so much on Switzerland. Maybe there's a great next step for you in Netherlands or in the UK or in Germany. So if you're really into developing your careers, it's not so much about which country to go to. It's really where the opportunity will be. So again, there's three different types of people in this world. They're the ones who are looking for the salary part. That's probably a lot of people. But then if you're looking for salary, you need to also have the skill set that goes with it. Then you have the people that are following partners, and then they have to reinvent their career to fit the family situation. And then you have people that are looking for the best opportunities out there. And usually those opportunities are not necessarily in countries where you want to go to. I mean, right now, the countries that are really booming out there are countries where you don't necessarily want to live, or I'm thinking about developing countries because, you know, they're probably experiencing more growth than the developed countries, because in our modern developed countries, you already have a lot of things. So you have a little bit of innovation here and there and some startups and everything, but we're not growing, you know, double-digit type of percentage, you know, of growth. So you will find this double-digit growth in Africa, in Asia, in countries where there's a lot of innovation happening. So that's why if you're looking for the next best career step, you know, that's really going to develop your skills and get you out there, I wouldn't necessarily focus on one country. I would really look at the jobs themselves, you know, where is it growing in the world in your field, and not necessarily look at a country, because again, you're also limiting yourself in terms of where you can grow your skills. So I hope this was helpful. Again, these are my tips to look for a job in Switzerland, and also I'm adding in the last section to also broaden up. That's what I always advise people, even if you want and you prefer a Swiss job. I don't advise people to keep it to one country, but to really look at everything, you know, and then you can make a choice. That's what I tell individuals. Maybe you get a call from another country, you're not necessarily motivated, and it's fine, but at least you've experienced it, you've tested it, and at least you also have a broader spectrum to choose from. Because if you only limit yourself to one country and you're not really getting feedback, you're not getting calls, that whole time that passes by, you're not really moving forward your project. And if you realize after 6 months that Switzerland is not interested in your skills, you will have wasted 6 months of job search.